You know that team that you were sure was going to draft a running back? Well, it didn't. And that's great news for the incumbent starter you were wary to draft just a couple weeks ago. And that QB you were just skipping over after a rough 2024? Well, he just might be a sleeper now. The NFL draft impacts more than just the incoming rookies, and we've picked out 7 veterans who got a post draft fantasy football bump, plus another 5 guys you should keep in mind late in your draft. You won't want to miss a name in the all new Draft Sharks podcast starting right now. Matt Schaff and Jared Small of DraftSharks.com here, and this show springs from the projections updates that we've made in the wake of the NFL draft. Jared, of course, as I mentioned before, feverishly updated the numbers, the offensive guys as the draft played out, but then he has also gone back through every team in the wake of the draft to, more carefully consider full team impact. So you can find updated projections on offense and defense on DraftSharks.com right now. And of course, those projections power rankings that are custom fit to your sync team on the site. Jared, is that a pretty fair description of what happened with our projections over the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, during draft, projections are kind of just like gut feel right off the bat. Like, what do I think these guys are going to do? And then I kind of go back the week after, readjust the rookies, and then kind of adjust the vets that got impacted by those rookie landing spots. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Some of those vets that gained value post NFL draft.
Yeah, and you came out of those post-draft adjustments with 7 guys that you've labeled post-draft winners. So why don't you start us off with a quarterback that, frankly, I'm tired of you talking about already.
Yeah, Caleb Williams is a winner this offseason and post-NFL draft. I don't think even you would disagree with that. What we're going to get into, I think, throughout the summer probably is the price and where it makes sense to draft Caleb Williams. But look at what the Bears have done this offseason. It's pretty obvious what they want to be. They hire Ben Johnson. They get 3 new offensive line starters in free agency. And then they use their first 2 picks of the draft on Colston Loveland and Luther Burden to go along with what was already a pretty strong pass catching core, right? Like, I think if we had said the Bears did nothing to this pass catching core and they just returned DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift, that would have been good enough for Caleb Williams. But instead they add 2 more weapons. So, I mean, at this point, I truly think it's going to be tough for Caleb Williams to fail in fantasy with the weapons, with the play calling, with Caleb Williams' rushing ability. He's going to be fine. The question, and again, what we're going to, I think, debate throughout the summer is he worth his ADP? He's already up to quarterback 8 on Underdog, in their recent ADP. I think that's all post-draft at this point. Quarterback 10 on Drafters. He's still our quarterback 11. So, I like the guy. I'm definitely going to be mixing Caleb Williams in. Again, I think it's his floor is good because of the situation. I do think his upside gets into the top 6-7 quarterbacks. So I want some Caleb Williams, but he's not going to come cheap in fantasy drafts. That's for sure.
He's a great example of why I like to draft early. As soon as best ball drafts get going. My first one of the year was an entry into the FFPC Never Too Early tournament. And I got Caleb Williams as the QB 15 at the end of round 9. And I'm like, sweet, I'm going to be in on Caleb Williams at this price. But shortly thereafter, everybody else got in on him as well. He got the QB 12, 11, 10 before the draft. I was like, all right, that's appropriate pricing. I don't think there's a whole lot of value left there. Now he's QB 8 on Underdog. When you pick a QB 8th overall, you're not drafting that guy to perform like the QB 8. You're drafting that guy because you think he can be, QB 4. So that's where I'm out on Caleb Williams, because I think that at this point where he's valued, and assuming that the market stays like that through the summer, he's going to have a special season to actually pay off at his draft cost. So for me, I'm like, yeah, I love everything that's happened for him this offseason. I think there's plenty of upside to the player himself, but why take Caleb Williams at QB 8 when I can get Drake May at QB 15, Jordan Love at QB 16, CJ Stroud at QB 17, Dak Prescott at QB 19? And, you might say, well, take them both, but I could just wait for that range and take 2 of those guys, which I would much prefer to do. We keep arguing about Caleb Williams, but I think it's some players, it's like you like him and I don't. In this case, I see it more like you're kind of a shiny Mylar Caleb Williams balloon, and I got to hold on to the string and make sure you don't fly into a power line.
Sure. And again, I do think, he can beat the quarterback 8 price tag, but you can't make an argument for him into the top 4 even, I think, because you have those 4 quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, who just do so much with their legs. Caleb Williams would have to have one of those 7% touchdown rate seasons to, I think, compete with those guys. So again, I think he can beat it. I think he could finish quarterback 5, quarterback 6. because once you get beyond those top four, like Caleb Williams, I think has the potential to match even Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes. I think he can get into that tier. But again, that's not much profit potential from the quarterback 8 price tag.
Yeah, I will say that he's worth keeping in mind if you're in a particular draft where he slides down past his ADP, which certainly can happen in that range of quarterback. Your other quarterback is somebody that's much less expensive. Who you got?
Yeah, it's Trevor Lawrence, who I think is kind of just discount Caleb Williams, right? Trevor Lawrence, quarterback 18 ADP on both Underdog and Drafter still. We'll see if that continues to rise. I'd expect it to a little bit. Lawrence has had a lot of the same positive things happen to him as Caleb Williams. He gets what should be an upgrade in coaching with Liam Cohen, like Caleb Williams got with Ben Johnson. And then Trevor Lawrence gets Travis Hunter arriving with the second overall pick. Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr., I don't think it's crazy to say that at the end of the season, we might consider that the best wide receiver duo in the NFL. I think there's that type of upside. You just look at both how talented both those guys are, how young they are. So I think, Lawrence obviously has that going for him. Like Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence is going to add some value with his legs, not to the extent of those top 4 quarterbacks we talked about, but Trevor Lawrence has averaged 18 rushing yards per game for his career so far. That's 13th best among 51 active quarterbacks with at least 20 career starts. So he's going to give us some rushing production as well. Unlike Caleb Williams, where we're behind ADP on him, we have Trevor Lawrence up to quarterback 14 for us right now. And he's in the same tier as the quarterback 6, Patrick Mahomes. Those guys are not separated by a whole lot. So to me, Trevor Lawrence at quarterback 18 ADP is a strong value at this point.
Yeah, I would have named him among that group of QBs I mentioned before, but I didn't want to, spoil it for you. I wanted to let you reveal him. If you check the ADP index for best ball drafts on draftsharks.com, Lawrence has hovered in late round 11, like before the draft. He's up slightly since the draft, but still just QB 18 in those drafts. There's plenty of focus on Liam Cohen's work in the run game in Tampa Bay as the OC last year, but Baker Mayfield also had an awesome season. The Bucs sat right in the middle of the league, 15th in neutral pass rate, and they did that despite losing Chris Godwin in the middle of the year, despite missing Mike Evans for a stretch in the middle of the year, and really having not much pass catching worth beyond those guys. So it was a very good run game. It was also a very good passing game last year. And when you look at what the Jaguars have done this offseason, especially with moving up to get Travis Hunter, it's pretty clear that they're not just going to run the ball as much as possible, put the pass secondary in this offense. So to me, Trevor Lawrence, not only an upside guy, but he's also a great way to buy into the upside on Travis Hunter. Like, I'm a little bit apprehensive about trusting Hunter, especially in a lineup setting format. So I think buying Trevor Lawrence at his, depressed cost as a QB2 is a good way to kind of tap into that upside.
Yeah, I think if Hunter hits, it's a pretty good bet that Trevor Lawrence is going to hit too. When you also factor in that Brian Thomas is still there.
Running back, the first guy on the list is a player that I would have bet money on his team drafting a running back before it did in round 6, not just round 6, but the middle of round 6. Who you got here?
Yeah, Chase Brown is our first winner at running back. They only had Taj Brooks in round 6. Now, I think I liked Taj Brooks pre-draft. I do think he is a threat to take some work this season. And that's kind of where I'm at with Chase Brown. Despite this result in the draft was definitely a good result for him, I still don't think what we saw at the end of last season, that type of volume is the most likely outcome for Chase Brown, because they do add Taj Brooks. Zach Moss supposedly is going to be back from that neck injury that cost him the second half of last season. They also added Samaje Perine, who I think they see as a passing down option. We did see Chase Brown last year, the final 5 games of the season with Zach Moss. He had at that point taken over as the lead back, but was not a workhorse. He averaged 12.8 carries and 3.0 targets per game. I think something like that is most likely for Chase Brown, which is fine. That can make him a nice RB2. I think he's a winner, though, because the Bengals not adding like a day 2 back at least keeps the dream alive that he could be that, workhorse 3-down back for this strong Bengals offense, be an RB1 producer in fantasy. So the ceiling case, I think, is still there for Chase Brown post-draft.
Yeah, the fact that they waited until round 6 to get that running back, and Taj Brooks was the 4th running back in round 6. So they weren't like, oh crap, we got to get a running back now. It tells me that they're comfy with Chase Brown leading the backfield. I would bet on him getting a bit more than those numbers that you mentioned with Zach Moss, but I would also bet on him getting significantly less than the workhorse level load that he was getting at the end of last year. So somewhere in between that range. And, we don't really know where that's going to be until at least we get closer to the season, probably not even until we get into the season. So if Chase Brown were a little bit cheaper, I would be more interested. He's at RB11 on Underdog right now. I don't think there's a whole lot of upside beyond that. I think there's more downside risk at that price. So I agree that he's a winner because of how Cincinnati approached running back in the draft. He's still not somebody that I'm super interested in. And just while we're talking running backs, I think it's worth noting that J.K. Dobbins and Nick Chubb are still out there on the market. Not sure how much Nick Chubb has left. I'm not thrilled about J.K. Dobbins, but Dobbins is probably going to sign somewhere and shake up some backfield projections wise. I'm very curious to see, which one that ends up being.
Yeah, Dobbins to me is the threat, like the remaining threat at running back, where he's going to come in and he's definitely going to impact the projections of the other guys in his backfield. Chase Brown, by the way, we have him RB15 in our updated ranking, so we're below ADP. He is 9th in our ceiling projections though at the position. So again, that is, which is factored into the final RB ranking. But again, we do have his ceiling quite a bit higher than his baseline projection.
I'm going to go ahead and reveal the second running back because I've been talking about Isiah Pacheco behind the scenes, in the scenes, before the scenes, through most of the offseason. I said before the NFL draft, I don't think that you sign Elijah Mitchell and Kareem Hunt early if you're planning or even just hoping to spend significant draft capital on a running back. And we saw the Chiefs not do that. We'll never know exactly what their plan was, but to me, this is what I expected them to do in the draft. What they did was take Rashid Smith in round 7. Like, we liked him heading into the draft. We like his complementary skill set here, but round 7 means that we can't count on anything from you. So we'll see if he has a significant role. And in the past, we've seen the Chiefs not be early into that free agent running back market. They would wait on Jerick McKinnon. They traded for Samaje Perine just before the season last year. They even signed Kareem Hunt in mid-September off the street last year when they needed somebody after Isiah Pacheco went down. So the fact that they made those early kind of low-level moves at running back, to me, telegraphed that they expect Pacheco to be back, to be in charge of this backfield, and then just, improve the insurance behind him. He's still an excellent value in drafts, remains RB30 on Underdog at the moment.
Yeah, there's going to be a little, I think, anchoring bias with Pacheco. Just, people were so afraid to draft him. They pushed his ADP down pre-draft. I think it's going to take a while. Maybe it never happens that he kind of, gets back to where he should be in ADP. There's still downside here, right? Because, what we saw from Pacheco over his final, his final 8 games last season, including the playoffs, coming back from the broken leg, 3.4 yards per carry. It was pretty ugly. He was, outperformed by Kareem Hunt, who is not good in his own right. So I think that's where the Chiefs went out and brought Kareem Hunt back, signed Elijah Mitchell as insurance, which I think you do want insurance policies behind Pacheco. But I think you're right, Matt, when you say the Chiefs want Pacheco to be their lead back, because he was good in that role over his first 2 seasons, 4.7 yards per carry over his first 2 seasons when he was healthier. And then, from a fantasy perspective, he was RB14 in PPR points per game in 2023. And then before the broken leg last year, he was RB15 in PPR points through the first 2 weeks of the season. So that's the type of ceiling we're talking about here. That's, baked into the ceiling projections you're going to find on DraftTricks. I do still think the floor is lower than we'd like just because of what we saw last year. And there's no guarantee he returns to pre-injury form. But if he does, he's an absolute smash at his current price right now.
I even disagree on the downside. I think being RB30 and ADP takes away all of the risk, because I think if the Chiefs were actually worried that we were not going to get something close, at least close, if not, completely matching pre-injury Isiah Pacheco, I think they do more than they did at running back this offseason. Andy Reid even said after the season, most guys wouldn't have come back when Isiah Pacheco did. Like, playing running back in the NFL is hard, even when you're at full health and, fully trained and all ready to go at the beginning of the season. He was coming off a broken leg. So that not only means you had to wait for that leg to heal, but it's not like you're building up the muscle around that broken bone while you're waiting for it to heal. So, even slight differences in that level of readiness are bound to impact a guy's performance once he gets back on the field. So that's why I've been excited about the way that the Chiefs address their backfield all off season. And it's wheels up for me, especially if he stays anywhere close to his current range. If we look back a year ago, Pacheco was like RB11 in ADP. So tremendous value. And if you're worried about Pacheco because of the end of last year, cover up his name and just draft Chiefs running back.
Yeah, and it's worth saying again that Kareem Hunt was not good last year. I know he scored fantasy points for us because he was getting the ball a ton and was scoring touchdowns, but he averaged 3.6 yards per carry. So if Pacheco is even 90% of pre-injury form, he's clearly Kansas City's best RB.
The last guy in our running back list is a situation where you like, I think, the team better than the player. What do you got here?
Yeah, DeAndre Swift has to be considered a post-draft winner because the Bears only added Kyle Monangai in round 7. Not an exciting player, more of a power back, so he does give the Bears something different than DeAndre Swift. Swift is a winner. I'm still approaching this one cautiously, though. For starters, it sounds like from multiple reports that the Bears were targeting TreVeyon Henderson and really wanted him in round 2. They even, I heard, tried to make a move up at some point to get him. Weren't able to do so. So that tells you they wanted to add something else to the backfield, weren't able to. And then you look at Ben Johnson was with DeAndre Swift in Detroit, and Swift's final year in Detroit. And that season, Swift had a career low 7.1 carries per game, just a 25% carry share. So I don't know if that means Ben Johnson didn't like DeAndre Swift, doesn't like, we haven't heard him say much about his backfield so far. That's what makes this a tricky one at this point. I do think DeAndre Swift, you look at the personnel here with Kyle Monangai and then Roshan Johnson as the other running back. I think at minimum, DeAndre Swift is safe as the lead pass catching back here. So that, keeps his floor decently high. As far as, how the carries are going to be distributed, that's totally up in the air. I think we're going to kind of have to see what that looks like as we get into training camp this summer.
I would agree that I'm not psyched about DeAndre Swift, and it certainly doesn't help that he has a bit of negative history, at least in how he was used when he played under Ben Johnson before. But he's also easily the most proven running back in this backfield. We've got, like you mentioned, him, Roshan Johnson, Kyle Monangai, Travis Homer. So, I mean, if you're not giving DeAndre Swift the ball a fair amount in that backfield, then I question, if you just have a personal bias against him. It also helps that he's still RB27 and underdog ADP. So you don't have to be excited about Swift to draft him. If you're at all excited about the Chicago offense in general, I think that you need to like Swift at least a bit, especially if he sticks at that price.
For me, the other concern with Swift, not only the Ben Johnson thing back in Detroit, but it's that, Swift last year, career low, 3.8 yards per carry. He was dead last among 47 qualifiers in rush yards over expected per attempt. So he just, he's coming off a bad year and has the bad history with Ben Johnson. Those are the concerns. But this to me is a prime J.K. Dobbins landing spot. If they, kind of want to upgrade on that, early down, more power back, I think Dobbins would make a lot of sense in Chicago.
Yeah, I think DeAndre Swift needs more help to find space. He's the kind of guy who will pick up yards if you present them to him, but he's not going to find them as much on his own. Wide receiver, Jared, we got an oldster here at the top of the list. Who do you like?
Yeah, Calvin Ridley, after the Titans only added a couple wide receivers in round 4 in Shamir DK and Alec Iomanner. Got to be the two toughest pronunciations in the same wide receiver.
They were clearly targeting pronunciations.
Yeah, I think I got those right though. But I mean, we liked Io Manor. I still do like Io Manor. I think he has a chance even this season to, by the end of the year, be Tennessee's number 2 wide receiver. But I don't think either of those guys or Tyler Lockett is a real threat to Calvin Ridley's role as the clear number 1 target in this passing game. You look last year, Calvin Ridley finished the season with a 22.5% target share, but that's spiked to 24% in the 11 games after DeAndre Hopkins was traded to Kansas City. And you look at this roster, it's kind of a similar spot for Ridley. I mean, maybe a bit more target competition than he had last year, but I still think, 24% of the targets is in play for him this season. Hopefully Cam Ward proves to be a pretty significant quarterback upgrade. And if you get decent quarterback play with that type of target share, I mean, I think Ridley at minimum is a nice wide receiver 3, and he could be a wide receiver 2 for us. And he's still going, deep into the 30s among wide receivers in ADP right now.
I'd go a little further and say that 23 to 24% should be like the expectation for him, and that there's upside beyond that. If we check the ADP market index for best ball drafting, Ridley has climbed some since we started tracking it back in mid-March. He was at the top of round 7 at that point, into the first half of round 6. Now inside of round 5, he's wide receiver 29 on Underdog as we speak. That's a little ahead of our wide receiver 34 placement for him in our half PPR rankings. It's a pretty fluid range of the wide receiver rankings, though. I think an attractive range. Like, it makes it a little bit easier to target a running back or 2 earlier in your draft and then get several of the guys in this range at wide receiver. I also think we spend a lot of time, mentioning how a player is more attractive for best ball formats where you don't have to guess when to start him. I think Calvin Ridley might actually go the other way this year and be somebody that you want more in a lineup setting format, because I'm not sure about the ultimate ceiling. I don't know that he really has upside into wide receiver 1 range, but I do think he has the upside to average 9 targets a game and give us usable numbers every week. And then, of course, spikes here and there where he scores touchdowns, because he's clearly the lead target for a team where everybody else is either old or unproven. So I don't get excited about Calvin Ridley, but I'm definitely interested in him in that range. I think he could be like a Jacoby Myers type of winner.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I do think his role is going to change this season, because he was one of the highest average target depth players in the NFL last year. But Brian Callahan, shortly after the draft, talked about wanting to give Cam more quicker, easier throws. And he and Callahan, highlighted Ridley as someone that can do that. So I do think you're going to see Ridley's average target depth come down, which should mean the catch rate comes up, and that should make him a bit more reliable on a week-to-week basis.
This is an interesting offense in general to take low-priced shots on. We talk about Calvin Ridley being a winner, but Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears also at least mild winners with no significant running back addition there. RB26, RB41 on Underdog. So, you can check our market index and see who stands out to you as values among these Titans as well. One more wide receiver, Jared. Who do you like here?
Rashid Shaheed is a post-draft winner for us. Actually, we just added him to our sleepers article that got updated earlier this week. That's up on the site if you want to check it out. Shaheed is in there. The Saints didn't add a wide receiver in the draft. Now, earlier in the offseason, they did not bring back Marquez Valdez-Scantling, added Brandon Cooks. I think that's a lateral move at best. I mean, Brandon Cooks just doesn't have much left at this point. So I think Shaheed is safe as the clear number 2 in this passing game behind Chris Olave. And really, this might even be more of a 1A, 1B situation. Rashid Shaheed last year, I was surprised. I was going back doing some research on him for that sleepers article. He actually led the Saints with 6.8 targets per game on a 23% target share in his 6 games last season before suffering that knee injury. Now, we're not projecting him to out-target Chris Olave this season. I still think Olave is the better wide receiver and will be the top guy here. But again, I think Shaheed is the clear number 2. He, by the way, was wide receiver 23 last year over those first 6 games. Obviously, quarterback concerns in New Orleans. The Derek Carr situation is still up in the air. Tyler Shuck, we'll see how he progresses throughout the offseason. But the other reason I like Rashid Shaheed is Kellen Moore in at head coach now for the Saints, and his offenses have consistently been like top 10 in the NFL in plays, whereas the Saints last year were like 22nd or 23rd in plays per game. So you're just going to get more play volume out of the Saints. The Saints are a team, I think they're sneaky fantasy value in New Orleans right now because of Kellen Moore. I think people are underrating the impact he's going to have on that offense.
I think there's also sneaky value because the offense overall is not one that you can reasonably get excited about right now. And I think Shaheed is a perfect example of how that can keep a player's price down. You don't have to like the Saints offense to like Rashid Shaheed because he's wide receiver 55 in Underdog ADP right now. If he was at that level last year, people would have been freaking out about it on Twitter. But now they're like, I don't know who's going to play quarterback. I've never seen Kellen Moore with this team. He's coming off injury. It's like, yeah, just ignore that and take Shaheed at wide receiver 55. And if he doesn't work out from that level in whatever format you're playing, then you've lost basically nothing. He's wide receiver 45 in our half PPR ranking. So we obviously like him ahead of where that Underdog ADP is right now. I do think he's more of a better in best ball type who's going to get a boost from our best ball factor calculations in your best ball draft war room. There's some potential to frustrate in lineup setting formats, but I mean, good luck finding a wide receiver from, 35 down who doesn't have the potential to frustrate you in a lineup setting situation.
Yeah, better in best ball for sure. I think, Shaheed was a high ADAC guy last year. I expect him to remain a high ADAC guy in 2025. But again, you have 23% target share last year. Even if you take him down to 20%, that's enough where he should be at least decently reliable on a week-to-week basis as like a wide receiver 4 or flex play in your lineup setting leagues.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that better in best ball does not equal avoid in lineup setting. You can like the guy in both formats.
Yes, for sure.
So those are our 7 post-draft winners that we wanted to highlight. But now that there's like a short list of a different kind of player, and these are really, ceiling plays. We talked at the top about how the list of overall winners kind of sprang from the projections updates. Well, those projections and each player's 3D value that you can view in many places on draftsharks.com. It includes ceiling projections. And this group of number 2 running backs came out of the NFL draft as winners. And they really highlight the importance of those ceiling projections because they're guys that are going to sit way down the rankings when you just look at the basic numbers. But when you get into the second half of your draft, when your draft war room hits upside mode and really accentuates that ceiling potential that we're looking for in double-digit round picks, these are the types of guys that you're going to want to watch for, situations that you're going to want to track, and, stash them on your bench, and they could be an injury away from really making a difference. So, Jared, who's the first guy up on this list?
Ray Davis is first up because he's simply my favorite on this list. He's a guy I've been taking. I was taking pre-draft. I'm going to be wanting him even more post-draft because Ray Davis is just locked in as the Bills' number 2 running back. They didn't add a running back in the draft. Ty Johnson is back, but we know what Ty Johnson is. He's a change of pace passing down back. We already saw it last year when James Cook missed week 6. Ray Davis was the clear lead back for the Bills. He had 20 carries and 3 targets in that game on a 58% snap rate. I think, that's what you're going to get if James Cook misses time with injury this season. We also have the James Cook contract situation. He wants a new deal. He wants to get paid. The Bills really seem to have no interest in paying him at all. I think they just want him to play out the last year of this deal, and they're going to, maybe go to Davis as the lead back in 2026, maybe add something else. But, if the contract situation boils over into August or even into the season, that obviously only adds more upside to Ray Davis.
Yeah, it's going to be a common theme with these guys. It's pretty easy to like these players as rookies and then let go of that when they don't really get opportunities in their rookie seasons. Ray Davis is probably not going to be useful in fantasy if James Cook stays healthy all season, but running backs get injured all the time. Like you said, we saw last year for a brief moment that Ray Davis can have a monster game if James Cook is out. So yeah, I like stashing Ray Davis. I actually just took him in an FFPC rookie draft, rookie in finger quotes, the other day. And I was like, I got to remember that Ray Davis actually is a high upside player at probably a lower cost right now than he was last summer. I haven't compared that yet. So yeah, I like Ray Davis as well. I also like the second running back here, Trey Benson. And it's hard to like him maybe as much as I should because of how much I like James Conner. But if you like James Conner, you have to remember the injury history and know that there's a decent chance that Trey Benson sees the field as a starter at some point this year.
Yep, that's exactly it. Like the Bills, the Cardinals did not add a running back in this year's draft. Trey Benson is the number 2 back there. He obviously didn't really ever push James Conner last year. I don't really expect him to push James Conner this year, but he is the handcuff to James Conner, who, like you said, man, he almost did it last year, but he still never played a full healthy NFL season. So if Conner misses any time in 2025, I think Benson's someone you're going to be able to put in your starting lineup.
The next team did draft a running back. So what makes you like Jalen Wright among this group of players?
Miami took Ollie Gordon in round 6. I'm going to consider that a win for Jalen Wright. Could have been better. Obviously, they could have added nothing, but I think we should have expected them to add something because remember, they let go of Raheem Mostert this offseason. He's now in Vegas. So I think Ollie Gordon, maybe fills some of the Mostert role. And Gordon does give this backfield some size that, obviously Devon Achane does not. Jalen Wright has more size, but, Gordon's a bigger, more powerful back than Jalen Wright. But I still think Wright will be the number 2 running back in Miami. That's probably going to be a camp battle we'll have to watch, but I still prefer Jalen Wright, who, by the way, was a round 4 pick last year. So, significantly more investment in Jalen Wright than Ollie Gordon. And, Wright never hit the fantasy radar last year, but he flashed when he got the ball. He actually led Dolphins running backs last year in yards after contact per attempt and missed tackles forced per attempt. So he was good on a per carry basis. I'm still optimistic about Jalen Wright mixing in a decent. I mean, we know Achane's not going to be a workhorse, especially on the ground, right? So we saw Raheem Mostert have games 6, 7, 8, sometimes 10 carries even behind Achane last year. Right, could get to that level, but I think if nothing else, I think he's the guy you're going to want in Miami's backfield if Achane misses time this year.
Yeah, the fact that he lasted until round 6 tells me that the whole league is like, Ollie Gordon's fine. Jalen Wright is more of a Mike McDaniel type of back. Just because we didn't see big stuff from him last year, we have seen over the past few years that multiple Miami running backs can pay off. So yeah, I like keeping Jalen Wright in mind. I love having Marshawn Lloyd on this list. He has been somebody that I'm drafting across formats, stashing where I can, and definitely a winner because Green Bay did not really add anything to that backfield.
Yeah, I had been drafting Marshawn Lloyd a ton too, but still though, with the thought of, how do the Packers feel about this guy? Because they took him in round 3 last year, but he barely got in the field last year. So they didn't see much of him. I was wondering if they were kind of ready to at least bring in someone else to compete for Marshawn Lloyd. They did not. They added no running backs in the draft. That tells me that they believe in Marshawn Lloyd's ability to, at least claim the clear number 2 job behind Josh Jacobs in that backfield. So again, Marshawn Lloyd was a round 3 pick. That's significant draft capital at running back. And just last year, they invested that in him. So Lloyd looks like the clear number 2 in a strong running game. He's still RB60 in ADP. To me, he's like the best running back pick if you're looking for a back with one of your last few picks in these best ball drafts.
Yeah, and Lloyd had really bad luck with injuries last year. So it's easily explainable why he didn't see the field as opposed to the team not liking him after drafting him in round 3. Last guy on the list surprised me a little bit. Roschon Johnson, keeping the light on for him?
I am, yeah, because again, we haven't really heard much from Ben Johnson on this backfield. We don't know what he thinks about DeAndre Swift, what he thinks about Roschon Johnson. Again, they only added Kyle Monangai in round 7, who just does not look like a very interesting prospect to me. Roschon Johnson was a round 4 pick just a couple of years ago. Didn't have the big college production, but that's because he, played behind Bijan Robinson, so tough to ding him for that. Johnson, he admittedly had an ugly 2024, but most of the stuff that came out of Chicago last year was ugly, right? You go back to Roshan's rookie season, he averaged 4.3 yards per carry. He caught 34 passes. He can play in the passing game a little bit. So I think there's a chance that, Roshan Johnson is kind of right there with DeAndre Swift. And this is kind of a committee backfield with Swift doing more of the pass catching stuff, maybe Johnson getting a lot of early down work, some of the goal line stuff. So again, I'm kind of open-minded with this Bears backfield at this point. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I do think Roshan Johnson, he's in the RB 50s in ADP. I think he's worth some shots at that price.
Yeah, I said if you like the Bears offense, you kind of have to like DeAndre Swift to some degree. But if you still don't like DeAndre Swift, then you should like Roshan Johnson to some degree. He entered the league with at least good passing game skills, a big dude. So it's entirely possible that he gets, plenty of work this year. I would say the range of potential outcomes includes him outperforming DeAndre Swift if, there is just something about Swift's game or approach or whatever that Ben Johnson simply doesn't like or doesn't think fits his scheme. So I think that openness is important, not just for Roshan Johnson, but, looking at these situations in general. Look for opportunity, look for talent, and then just kind of chase it at prices that make sense. Check out the updated rankings for all these players and for your specific format on draftsharks.com. Let us know in the comments section for this video who you think is too high or too low. Tweet at us about who's not getting enough love in our updated rankings, or, come hit us with questions about those rankings on the Draft Sharks subreddit. You can find the link for that in the show notes for this program, wherever you are consuming it. And I just showed my age by calling it a program, I think. It is player profile season at draftsharks.com right now. That means we are digging even further into every player's details, into every team situation. And it means we're constantly refining what we think of certain players and where each one should fit in your particular format. So ride with us throughout the rest of the spring and into and through the summer, and let Draft Sharks be your unfair advantage.